So somebody in Argos's Discord just told me something very interesting today. Something that I never really heard anything about before. Apparently, some of the early developers of MetaZoo came out at some point in time, and they were talking about how MetaZoo was originally designed to be only one set. They're going to put out the base set, and that was going to be the end of it. But then it came out, and it started to be successful, and the crypto bros stepped in, like Aoki and them, and they decided to turn it into a cash cow, and they're going to run it into the ground to basically milk it for everything it's worth and then pull the rug from underneath it. Now, I don't know if people are just throwing out crazy theories or what's going on, but if that's actually the situation and that's actually what happened, they need to really start suing these motherfuckers. That's all I have to say, because they do not deserve to be around if this game was designed from the get-go to be a scam. Because I just talked about in my video yesterday, there are signs there that I believe the game was intended to be real and legit. But now, I'm hearing this news and it's like, it doesn't really make sense, right? I feel like I'm living on two different timelines because I've heard other interviews or people talk about how they saw a lot of Mike Waddell's early drawings and sketches and all these pages and pages and pages of research that he did and how he had all these plans for future sets. The same thing with Rudy. That's why he jumped on board with this game, because he saw all the stuff that Mike had planned. You know what I mean? It's a reason why he turns down a lot of these games, because they don't have a future plan. They got the first set there, but they don't have anything planned beyond that. And he kept iterating and hitting on the fact that Michael had all this shit planned for the next sets. You know what I mean? And Rudy got on pretty early. I got on board right after the Kickstarter. It was like, I think around late February, maybe early March, I believe, of 2021, right before Cryptid Nation 1 dropped. That's when I got on board. So I wasn't there pre-Kickstarter or even during the Kickstarter. I don't know exactly when Aoki hopped on board, but I do remember Rudy putting out that video, because at that time, I mean, there was a little bit of buzz around the Kickstarter boxes and stuff, but when Rudy put out that video, that's when stuff really started to take off. But even then, Cryptid Nation 1 wasn't really worth that much. He did a sale and he sold his boxes, but it was shortly after that sale went down where the boxes really just shot to the moon. You know what I mean? That's really when it exploded. Obviously, Rudy played a big factor in that. But it makes you think, was Rudy really in it just for the pump and dump? Because a lot of us want to believe that he actually thought this was going to be something and he got fooled just like the rest of us. As much as I shit on Rudy, I still want to believe that he saw something here and he was tricked by Michael himself, because Michael gave him this spiel and basically sold him this dream that was never actually going to become a reality. And then Rudy basically passed that on to us. And then after everything went to shit, basically turned around and said, I never told you guys to invest in this and yada, 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 because he's a piece of shit. But maybe he's even bigger piece of shit. And this was just a big scam coordinated by all of them, that Rudy was just going to pump it from the very beginning. And they're going to make this game that wasn't actually a game. And then they're just going to run into the ground and then run away with everyone's money. If that's the case, like, that's disgusting, because otherwise the timelines just don't really line up to me. You know what I mean? There's a small gap between when the Kickstarter ended and when Rudy put out that video and received all that Kickstarter product, before the game really started to take off. So there's no way that they would have known that the game was going to be successful, because the Kickstarter only raised like $17,000. There's no rug pull with $17,000. You know what I mean? It's crazy he was even able to make Cryptid Nation 1 with $17,000. Obviously, he had a lot of his own money or money from someone else that invested or whatever, because there's no way he did that with only 17 grand. So there was no rug pulling to be had with that. And there wasn't a whole lot of like hype at that time. It took a little bit after Rudy put out that video and after the sale and everything, where stuff really started to skyrocket. You know what I mean? And I believe Aoki was already on board at that time. So I don't know. The timelines don't really line up. So I'm not sure how true this is. But I'm not going to say that these developers that apparently were let go after that and they hired a new team to design the future sets, I'm not going to say that they're lying, but I'd like to see some, proof, of these guys saying it, because I haven't seen any. I was just told this. This is just hearsay at this point in time. But if that's the case, that's really, really going to piss me off, because here I am believing that Michael had all this shit laid out from the very beginning, and maybe that came after the fact, after the crypto bros came in and were like, we're going to turn this into a cash cow because we see money here, just like we do with NFTs, and we're just going to run this bitch into the ground and make as much as we can and run away. And if that's the case, man, like, fuck you, Rudy, fuck you, Aoki. I mean, maybe Mike was a good guy from the very beginning. Maybe he had good intentions and then got corrupted shortly after. And these guys kind of took over and grabbed the reins. And then he just kind of fell victim to himself, because obviously he has some personal issues. Or maybe he was a piece of shit out the gate too. Maybe they're just all scammers. And if you look at his past, people would say he was already a scammer. So maybe these guys are all just pieces of shits, man. Like maybe truly that's what's happening here. But it's disgusting to think about. That's really how this went down. I like to live in an alternate reality where MetaZoo was just designed to be an actual game and the people behind it actually cared and hired the right people. You know what I mean? And MetaZoo could be bigger than Pokemon in that reality. Or, even not even, it doesn't even have to be bigger than Pokemon. Even a 10th the size of Pokemon, and that would be massively successful and good enough for me. I'd love to live in that reality, but that's not the reality we live in. We live in a reality where we're all just getting fucked in the ass and lied to every which way and just scammed, 7 days of Sunday. Like, I don't know what the fuck we're supposed to do out here, guys. But if this is the world we're living in, man, where everyone's just out to get everyone and just greed just rules everything. Like, fuck y'all, man. Aoki's a piece of shit. And to think I was giving Aoki some credit, a couple months ago when I heard that Aoki kind of got pushed to the side because Aoki kind of wanted to do his own Hero Quest idea with the brand. And I was like, maybe they should have went with his idea instead of going with like Andy and all of them. But then the reality kind of hit me like Aoki's a piece of shit, man. It probably would have just been more NFT stuff because he's the one that brought NFTs in, and it just would have been worse. And I mean, I regret saying any of that and giving that guy any credit. I think Aoki's an absolute piece of shit. His dad was a piece of shit. He's a piece of shit. Like, fuck y'all, man. Like, literally. You know what I mean? I hope you all get what's coming to you. We need to sue the brakes off of these motherfuckers. I hope we get a class action lawsuit going at some point in time because there's definitely a case here. You know what I mean? There's definitely some shit behind the scenes that could be found. They definitely left a trail. I'm sure they're not that smart, you know what I mean, to not leave some kind of trail behind. And like I said, they probably got a lot of their money in offshore accounts. So I don't know if we'd be able to get much out of them, but something needs to be done, man. And it's not even personally, because a class action lawsuit is like, what am I going to get, $5? Every individual person's not going to get shit. But it's more so just the principle of these motherfuckers, not getting away with this stuff. You know what I mean? And us setting an example, that no one else can do this in the future. We're not going to stand for this shit. You know what I mean? Because this is fucking ridiculous. And it's a lot bigger than people want to make it out to be. MetaZoo was pretty massive for a while, and a lot of money was spent. You know what I mean? With bad intentions, ultimately, behind the scenes. And I just wish we had like fundamental sound proof that could say which way, was it a scam from the get-go or was it not a scam from the get-go? That's what I want. I just want solid proof so we can confidently say it's one way or the other, because you have all these haters and people that have been, saying the game was shit since day one. And then a lot of us that saw most of the problems and said they need to fix these things, but we waited around because we thought they would correct the course. And now we blame a lot of these issues just because they were potentially greedy and they didn't know how to run a company and they ran it into the ground. But we thought they were going to improve on things eventually because, they would have to if they wanted the company to continue to grow. You know what I mean? You can look at it that way, which is the way they probably want us to look at it, because they want to get away with this without being called scammers, right? And if they're called scammers, well, they probably don't give a shit anyway, but they'd rather not be called scammers at all and just think it was a failed company. And that's what a lot of people do these days, and they get away with it. But if it was actually a scam, well, then fuck them. You know what I mean? And they need to be held accountable. It's not just enough that the business failed. You know what I mean? They need to be held accountable. They can't be just driving around in their Lambos and shit and getting away with this stuff while everyone else is, in massive debt, and they're a lot of card shots probably closed down just because of this fucking game, right? A lot of families were probably ruined. A lot of people's dreams were ruined. And, it cost a lot of damage ultimately. And because these motherfuckers wanted to play games, you know what I mean? That's ultimately what it was. So I don't know, but that's just an interesting tidbit of information that I was given. Again, I don't think I've really heard anything about that before, so that was kind of new to me. And like when he said it, like I don't believe it for a second, but it's like the more you look into it, it's like the timeline doesn't really line up, but maybe Rudy was lying to us, you know what I mean? And that wouldn't shock me considering he's lied to us already, multiple times. And and the fact that I'm giving the benefit of the doubt at all at this point in time is crazy, because you can't trust Rudy. He's a total piece of shit and scumbag. But that would just take it to a whole new level at that point in time. If that was literally his intentions out the gate, was in cahoots, out the gate just to pump and dump and scam everybody and not give a shit about his image. And clearly works because he still has a fan base, even after all this, even after lying and saying he didn't tell people to invest. And after multiple games now, what he does is when a game fails that he backs, he starts talking about it and he brushes it under the rug and people forget about it. And then new people come in anyways, because like I said, he constantly has new fans and new people coming in. and they're fickle. He says all the time, people leave, people come in, nobody remembers, and he continues to have a fan base and continues to, live this lavish life of his on YouTube and being a big content creator. And it's sickening. It's absolutely sickening. You know what I mean? Like, I want to see this guy go down just as much as I want to see Aoki go down, just as much as I want to see Michael Waddell go down, Andy go down. All these motherfuckers deserve to go down. And I'm hoping one day this shit will come to light and they get what's coming to them.